Okay, so two things. First, yes, this is the correct side of the car for a steering wheel to be on. And second, are all Mormon prophets massive narcissists, or just some of them?
I've done a whole video on the previous prophet Russell M. Nelson and his competition with his predecessor Gordon B. Hinckley, which seemed to be an ego-driven attempt to outshine him at every turn. When you get to the end of this video, I'll make sure it's linked.
But hold on a second, because there's an entire video to get through before we get to that.
Right you are. The point is, between the birthday parties, the phrase
our beloved prophet
ad nauseum, and the way he seemed to just generally lap up attention, it wouldn't be difficult to conclude that he was somewhat narcissistic. And it's also not difficult to imagine how being the leader of a church of millions, claiming openly to
speaks for God,
would create an environment in which narcissism and self-importance could flourish. Indeed, it might be easy to assume that Dallin H. Oaks would fall victim to this. And he still might. But at the moment, it seems we're seeing at least some evidence that he isn't.
Now, as regular viewers of this channel will know, I have every reason to dislike Dallin H. Oaks. Not only did he let me down personally, but his call for more excommunications through leadership training last year may have directly led to my own.
But as always, I'm doing my best to put my personal feelings to one side and just engage with the evidence as it presents itself. So let's take a look at some of the ways in which Dallin H. Oaks has diverted from the narcissistic proclivities of his predecessor.
I love to travel. And apparently, Russell M. Nelson loved it as well. One of the first things Russell M. Nelson did when he became president of the church was go on a global ministry tour like some sort of pseudo rock star.
When he came to London on this tour, he remarked on the level of preparation made for his visit. In fact, let's take a listen to the audio recording, which is courtesy of Peter Bleakley over at Mormon Civil War.
Well, here we are in the year 2018, and we're in London. We've seen photographs of the preparations that were made cleaning the chapel here in Hyde Park Chapel. New paint, new carpets, new, I don't know what all went on. But I say to all those who were so busily engaged in making it look good for the Inspector General, thank you for your efforts. Sister Nelson and I were talking late last night about how minute those details were, even scrubbing things with a toothbrush to make sure that things were spotless and clean. We wondered if we ought to do the same about our lives.
What I can't quite get over is that he spoke in completely normal terms about that level of effort. No even false modesty or suggestion that this was too much effort to go to. The most he did was thank people for doing it, as though it's something that should be done at all. Now in contrast, Oaks hasn't gone on a global ministry tour. Maybe he will, but I doubt it. I'm just not getting the sense from him at the moment that that's something that he would do.
I think about the time he turned up one Sunday, completely unannounced, in the building behind me. This is the church I grew up attending, and one Sunday, with no fanfare and no warning, Oaks turned up. Sure, he may have changed since then, but listen to this from my most recent interview with Jim Bennett.
The prophet walks into the room and everybody stands up and is silent until the prophet gets to his chair. And I was in the conference center many times when President Hinckley would come in, and he would be almost embarrassed and he'd almost run to the chair and be like, sit down, sit down, sit down, everybody sit down. And then while I've been in the choir, the president of the church has been Russell Nelson, and he comes in and everybody stands up. And he would sort of walk and he'd stop and maybe talk to somebody on his way to his chair. And I'd be standing there and I'd be like, could you please sit down so that we can all sit down?
Yeah, he kind of basked in it a little bit. He really basked in the attention.
Yeah, he very much was, I am the prophet and I speak for God. And I mean, I can't imagine President Hinckley in that log cabin doing that same thing with those primary children. I think President Hinckley was very uncomfortable with that.
How many times did we hear the phrase "our beloved prophet" being used to refer to Russell M. Nelson? He seemed to be, so it will be interesting to see how Dallin H. Oaks approaches this.
Well, it will be
less inclined.
I'm seeing actually, it's been really remarkable because I've seen him now in person. I sang at the memorial service for President Nelson. I did not sing at the funeral. There were two different things. There was a memorial service just days after, and they just sort of jerry-rigged something quickly. And then the funeral was much more elaborate, and I wasn't able to go sing at that. But But when President Oaks walked in the room, in the tabernacle, this was in the tabernacle, everybody stood up. And President Oaks was like, no, 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 no. Like almost it was, I'm not president of the church yet. I don't know if that's what it was. But he was very kind of, no, 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 let's not do that.
So not only were no special preparations made when Oaks visited this building, I can guarantee you it wasn't scrubbed with toothbrushes. But it seems that even now he doesn't want to command that kind of behaviour. Right, off to the next location.
Now this is the one that started me on the path of thinking about this at all. When Dallin H. Oaks didn't speak at the Christmas devotional this year, it was unprecedented. The internet was quick to speculate that it was due to his health or maybe something else was amiss.
And indeed, under President Nelson, we got so used to him never missing an opportunity to speak that we couldn't possibly imagine he wouldn't speak at the Christmas devotional. Perhaps like Narcissus, Russell M. Nelson couldn't miss an opportunity to see his own reflection. But what if Dallin H. Oaks is just different? What if he didn't feel the need to speak? The announcement of new temples is something Russell M. Nelson took great pride in. It's also one of the first things that Dallin H. Oaks changed once he was officially in the driver's seat.
With the large number of temples now in the very earliest phases of planning and construction, it is appropriate that we slow down the announcement of new temples. Therefore, with the approval of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, we will not announce any new temples at this conference.
Now, a side note, Oaks still isn't officially in the driver's seat, or should I say, legitimately, at least not according to my understanding of the law of common consent as found in Doctrine and Covenants. I've done a full video on that before, and if I remember, it'll be somewhere above my head.
Anyway, the point is, straight away Oaks came in and ended the temple announcement streak in conference. Those announcements were something that Nelson took great joy in, as observed by Oaks.
He loved to announce new temples at the conclusion of each general conference, and we all rejoiced with him.
Even when Russell M. Nelson couldn't be at the conference and was phoning it in, he still had to be the one to make the announcement.
Edinburgh, Scotland.
He could have let someone else do it, but no. Oaks, however, seems to have no such desire to have to be the one who announces temples. In a historic move, in fact, a lowly 70, not even an apostle, announced the construction of a temple in Portland, Maine. Now, 70s are still on the payroll, and they are still senior church leaders, but it still seems an unusually low rank to make such an announcement. It also seems as though this will be the norm through President Oaks' tenure, however long that ends up being. He is 93 after all. Now, the exact reason for this change in the way that temples are announced is open to debate, but there is no denying that letting someone else do the announcing is in stark contrast to how Russell M. Nelson behaved. And that is the crux of this video. I think it may take some time to adjust to the reign of Dallin H. Oaks, and at least in this area it does seem he is diverging from his predecessor in a positive way. I'll be keeping a close eye on him though, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of that. And speaking of not missing things, if you don't want to miss the behind the scenes content and other bonus content, then consider joining my Patreon, because that's where you'll find it.
So with that, I have 1,000,001 Christmas errands to be running at the moment. I'm actually just dropping off some presents with a friend at the moment. So I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I will see you on Sunday for the big Mormon Quiz of the Year, where me and a group of panellists are going to go through the year that's just gone by in Mormonism in quiz format, having a good time. It's going to be quite fun. Audience participation is encouraged, nay, mandatory, and so hopefully I'll see you there.